finally, a source of raw, real, and honest information on healthcare issues that matter most. Welcome to BS Free MD. From the latest medical information to how to stay sane as a doctor or a patient, no subject is taboo, no BS is allowed. Now, let's welcome your hosts, Doctors May and Tim Hindmarsh.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of BS Free MD. And today we have a special guest with us, like all of our guests who are special, Dr. Kevin Stillwagon. He is not only a chiropractor, but also a former airline pilot. Initially licensed as a chiropractor in Florida and Pennsylvania. Back since the 80s, he's been a staunch advocate for medical freedom. He self-published a book in 1984 highlighting the dangers of vaccines. Can't wait to get into that. And after becoming an airline pilot in 1987, he continued his career until 2020 when he refused to wear a mask, face mask, as part of his uniform and was forced to retire. Since then, he's been vocal against mandatory masks and vaccines, speaking out at school boards, county commission meetings, and freedom rallies. And he's also the vice president of usfreedomflyers.org. Welcome to the show, Dr. Stillwagon.
Pleasure to have be on your show. I watched your show with Dr. Paul Thomas, and I thought, man, you guys are so much fun to talk to. So this should be fun today.
Yeah, well, we hope so, and very informative. So tell us, just in brief background, how did you get these two different careers? I mean, this is pretty fascinating. You know, that takes a long time to become a chiropractor, and then the skill set to maintain those skills, and then airline captain. Yeah, let's just do that.
Yeah, so I started flying at the age of 15, and my father was a chiropractor, and he wanted to be a pilot as a hobby. So when he started learning to fly, I started to learn to fly along with him, and that was like a father-son project. And I really wanted to be an airline pilot, and he wanted me to be a chiropractor. So I figured that I could do both. And I did do both. And I practiced full time for about 7 years. And then I started to do both jobs at the same time. And there are ways that you can do that by adjusting your schedule as an airline. A lot of people don't understand how that works, but as a flight crew member, you can adjust your schedule to work as hard as you want or as little as you want. And so I was adjusting my schedule down to spend less time, in the cockpit and more time in the office. And then as things moved along, I was having more fun, in the cockpit than I was in the office environment. And so I just decided to make a shift, and I let my license as a chiropractor expire, and just decided to stick full time with the airlines. And so I've got over 33 years of airline flying experience. That's quite a lot. And I've seen a lot of things happen over the years that have affected aviation safety, particularly since the illegal mandate of the shot that went into pilots and flight attendants and air traffic controllers and mechanics. Yeah, so we can talk about that for sure.
I just find it fascinating that you have someone with a medical background then that gets into aviation. And I think that's just the perfect background and segue, especially with what's gone on over the years. And like you said, with the vaccines, the illegal mandates, for you to have that. I mean, did you know anybody else in your career, like in aviation, that had a medical background that, had facts, data that was standing up?
Yeah, I did.
Kind of alone. Yeah.
I did. In fact, I was walking down the concourse one day, and I saw another pilot walking towards me in uniform, and we kind of looked at each other and pointed to each other and like, I know you. And we started naming different airlines that we'd been at, and he kept saying, no, that's not it. He said it was Palmer College of Chiropractic. So we were classmates at Palmer College. So I'm not the only one that did this. I've run across several medical doctors that have done it. several dentists that have done it, and many attorneys that have done it. So it's not unusual for an airline pilot to have two separate careers. Yeah.
Huh. Who knew? It's funny because I'm just thinking, but my situation is flipped. So my dad was not an airline pilot, but he was a bush pilot who actually did all kinds of stuff and was certified and looked at going into commercial aviation. But I thought about it because I love flying, and of course they're like, no, you're not going to make any money in it. That was back in the day. Just go into medicine, and there I stayed. And then the older I got and thought about it, I'm like, I'm getting too old for this. So my career would be cut short. Anyways, enough about my stuff. So let's get into when you first published the book back in '84 about the dangers of vaccines. What sparked your interest then for writing that, and some of the key things that you kind of highlighted in your book?
Yeah. So one of the things that my father really wanted me to do was to engage the public in education on natural health and the dangers of vaccines. And so, I'm your classic anti-vaxxer. I've never been vaccinated for anything ever in my life, and I have been all over the world. Apparently to countries that supposedly require vaccines, they don't. I've been able to move in and out of those countries freely with no problem. So yeah, I'm an anti-vaxxer. And so I was trying to, convey to the public the dangers of vaccines and not to vaccinate your children, and showing them how to get out of vaccinating your children by using religious exemptions or medical exemptions if necessary. And I found that people, were not really wanting to hear that. They wanted to put the medical doctor up on a pedestal, and they've got way more education than I do. They know more than I do. They know what's best for me and my children. So I'm going to go with them. Now, that wasn't all of the people, but that was many of them. So I became very frustrated, and I decided to write a book all about it. And I cover all of the childhood vaccines. And I also talk a lot about the dangers of losing medical freedom, which I saw was probably going to happen. And indeed, it did happen. So I was kind of way out ahead of the curve on that one in 1984. And, that was even before the act of 1986, where they gave vaccine manufacturers liability protection against any injury. So
I'm finding that, now that with this I would say revolution of talking about vaccines, their effectiveness versus the potential harms, and everything out there in the social media world, what it seems to come up against, because I think back to how we grew up, we got a few vaccines back in the 60s, but I don't know, Tim, I had all the childhood illnesses anyway, from chickenpox, measles, mumps, the whole bit, and knew other kids that got them, didn't know of anybody that had any horrendous outcomes. But in talking with lay people that aren't even in the medical world, but even people that are, there's this big freak out fear that their child will be the one that gets a childhood illness with a complication, and it'll be devastating, and therefore the risk is not worth it. Yet they seem to think that vaccines are these fail-safe wonder injections that will protect them from their child having a rare complication of measles or something.
And so that's a major hurdle to overcome. And the problem is the lie is so believable, and people actually want to believe the lie. And it's so easy to believe that here, all you got to do is inject this stuff into your body. It will make antibodies. It does. And the antibodies will protect you. They don't. And that's the part that is my job to educate people on. And, people are starting to wake up to this. The first part of it is that these antibodies will protect you from getting infected. Well, we saw what happened with the COVID shot. And even publicly, Deborah Birx and Tony Fauci had to both admit that, no, this shot will not protect you from becoming infected. If you get the shot, you can still get infected. And yes, you can still spread it to others. And the biological reason for that is very simple. It's because, people want to follow the science. What does the science say? The science says that if you inject something into your body, a foreign substance, your body will make antibodies. It most certainly does. But the key is those antibodies are serum antibodies. They're always inside of you. They're circulating in your blood and in your lymph. They cannot prevent something from getting inside of you. That infection. Anything that crosses the epithelial barrier that separates the inside of you from the outside, once that happens, you are infected. The antibodies are there to react to the infection. They cannot prevent the infection. So I think most people now understand that. But really, the part that people need to understand is that the antibodies cannot prevent the illness from getting worse. They can't do that either. And the reason is because the antibodies that are created from these shots called vaccines, they are not full coverage antibodies. The only way that you can get full protective coverage of antibodies is to have a natural infection. It's got to come through the epithelial barrier so that the cells that guard the barrier can experience the whole thing, whatever it is, all of it. And by doing so, they train the T cells. And the T cells are what gives you memory for the future infection. And the T cells are also what trains the B cells to make those well-rounded, full coverage antibodies. So here's the problem that most people don't get. When you inject something into your body, okay, there is an immune reaction. And what happens is B cells, the cells that actually make the antibody, they can actually detect what was injected, and they will react immediately to that and start creating antibodies against it. But they're suboptimal antibodies. They're not the complete antibody that would be necessary to protect you. The well-rounded antibodies come from the T cells, and the T cells absolutely cannot detect or see or react to something that is injected into you at all. They can't do that. They have to be presented with chopped up pieces of whatever that was. And that happens through what are called antigen presenting cells. And one of those antigen presenting cells is called a dendritic cell. And the dendritic cell can, in fact, detect what was injected. It chops it up into smaller pieces. It presents that to the T cell, and then the T cell will help the B cell to form a perfect antibody against it. So the problem is when you inject something into your body, a foreign substance, it's called an antigen. And when you inject too much of this stuff, the cells will react to it immediately and start cranking out suboptimal antibodies. Those suboptimal antibodies can be dangerous. And the reason is because all antibodies are shaped like the letter Y. The Y end is the business end. That's what's going to attach to the antigen, whatever it is. It could be, an infection that you got, or a bioweapon of some sort, or something that was injected into your body. The Y end is what attaches to that antigen. But if that antibody, that Y-shaped antibody, is suboptimal, the exposed tail of the Y, which is the signaling end, that's the end that tells the immune system what to do with what's attached to the business end. And the whole thing is called the antigen-antibody complex. You see, it's the antigen and the antibody attached together as one thing. But the signaling end is that exposed tail of the Y. If it's a suboptimal antibody, which is what you're going to get with these injections, the tail of the Y can signal the immune cells to take in the antigen antibody complex, but instead of destroying it and eliminating it from your body, that immune cell will allow that antigen to be replicated. There will be more copies of it made. They will be released back out into the blood and into the lymph so that they can infect other cells and other tissues. That's called antibody-dependent enhancement of infection. It makes it easier for you to get infected, and it also makes it easier for the infection to spread. And this is why people like Joe Biden that got 6 booster shots can't figure out why they continue to get infected with what they were supposedly injected against. That's called antibody-dependent enhancement of the infection. It's dependent upon the antibody because the antibody is suboptimal. But it gets worse than that, because the second part of the lie is that the antibody will protect you from getting severe disease symptoms. Well, that's not true either, because if you continue to inject yourself with these antigens, you're going to have so many suboptimal antibodies floating around in your blood and in your lymph that the next time that you get infected, and you will, you have so many of these antibodies that they start attaching to the invader by 2s or 3s or 4s instead of just 1. And what happens is, because of the close proximity of the exposed tails, it kicks off an arm of the immune system that's called the complement cascade. The complement cascade is the heavy artillery of your immune system. It's supposed to be reserved for chronic infections or localized infections that your body is having a really hard time getting rid of. And believe me, you do not want the complement system activated when it doesn't need to be. And the reason is because it's extremely aggressive. It's highly inflammatory. It will go after any cell that has that antigen that you injected attached to it with a vengeance. And it will go after any cell that's making that antigen with a vengeance. And it sets off the complement cascade. Basically, it's 15 quintillion proteins of 30 different varieties that you were born with. We all have them. They're always there. But when this cascade gets kicked off, there's one protein that starts the cascade. It changes shape of the next one. The end of the line is what's called the membrane attack complex, where these proteins result in holes being drilled in the invader and also in the cell that's either got the invader attached or is making the invader. But the problem is it's not specific. It can actually attach to normal tissue cells nearby. And when that starts happening, then you get destruction of normal tissue. That's a pathology that creates symptoms. And depending upon where this happens, the symptoms can vary. If it happens in the heart, for example, it's going to be myocarditis. Why is that? It's because this inflammatory syndrome is so hyperactive that it will draw in extra white blood cells like neutrophils. And neutrophils are highly toxic. They secrete all kinds of toxic chemicals to help destroy whatever is near that invader. And so it creates a lot of extra swelling and extra inflammation. Well, that's what myocarditis is. But the problem is this can also happen systemically all through the body. And when that happens, they have a special name for it. It's called MIS. That stands for multi-inflammatory syndrome. And then they put a letter on the end of that, either an A, indicating that it happens in adults, or a C, indicating that it happens in children. And you guys know as well as I do that this product has been injected into perfectly healthy children, and it has resulted in multi-inflammatory syndrome, and it's deadly, and these children have died for no reason at all. So this shot. Go ahead.
I was going to say, while you were talking, of course, that's the first thing I think of. The whole struggle is that the experts, the talking heads out there, blame the virus for causing that because of the infection with COVID is causing, the multi-inflammatory syndrome, the
Mm-mm.
myocarditis, and therefore, they say with having the immunity will protect you from it getting that bad, and that's what people buy into. So, how does someone decide which side to listen to? Is it the virus causing it? Is it the
No.
is it the shots causing it?
So-
How do you know what I'm saying? It's like,
But-
who do you
but I
Well,
wanna-
a virus never killed anybody. That the thing that is deadly is the immune reaction to whatever the invader is, the virus or whatever you're injected with. The immune reaction to that, and I kind of talked about that. That's what results in the tissue damage. And the tissue damage, if it gets bad enough, it can be deadly, especially if it happens in the lining of your lungs called the alveoli. You start to have destruction of that layer inside of your lungs, and that causes interstitial fluid to start leaking into your lungs. And it makes it hard for you to breathe. And that's called pneumonia. And that exposes the inside of your lungs now to other bacteria. And now you've got a pneumonia infection, and this can be deadly. So it's not the virus, it's the immune reaction that's causing the tissue damage that results in the symptoms. And if you don't get this under control, it can be deadly.
But it's interesting because I think that I don't entirely agree with you, which is perfectly fine. But I think that there's two elements to the vaccine question that I think are really important for people to understand from a 30,000 foot level, and you are a pilot. Number one is there's the virus itself that you're vaccinating against. That's critical. So this idea that you can shove something in somebody's arm and protect them from a respiratory virus, when the way respiratory viruses get in is almost exclusively through your nose. So you need that endothelial immunity, the humoral immunity of your mucosa. So it's kind of a fool's errand to think that you're going to get a flu shot in your arm and it's going to prevent getting the flu from somebody coughing on you. But the other side of this is there are some vaccines that have been shown with very, very good data that were really effective. And if you look at the work of Peter Abbe in Africa, where they were vaccinating with the old live measles vaccine, that's the critical element to this, in children that were absolutely vaccine naive. They started doing this back in 1978. They showed a direct cause and effect. Kids that got native measles and survived, or kids that got the live vaccine, actually had better all-cause mortality. So they didn't just die less of measles, they died less of lots of infections. And so they went down this rabbit hole, his group. They're Danish physiologists or something. And they said, okay, what vaccines have all-cause mortality benefit? And the only three they could show were live measles, oral polio, which makes sense because oral polio actually gives you immunity to where polio comes in because you eat polio, and the BCG vaccine, which hasn't been given in North America for probably 70 years. So the thing that was interesting, though, where my head exploded, was all three of these vaccines haven't been on the childhood vaccination schedule for decades. And then you go down what are we doing with the childhood vaccines now? And we're using these super weak versions of the virus and then adding these adjuvants like aluminum or mercury or whatever to stimulate the immune system. And yet there's been zero studies on all-cause mortality in these vaccines and zero studies on whether you can combine 6 shots together and whether that works better or worse or causes downstream neurodegenerative problems or autoimmune disorders or any of this. And so there's actually really good vaccine data for 3 vaccines. And there's essentially zero vaccine data for the childhood vaccination schedule.
Yeah.
And I mean, it took me years and years to get to this point, but you're like, holy crap.
Yeah, you covered a lot of territory there. And I will tell you that the oral polio vaccine that was used and the rotavirus vaccine, which is also oral, and you nailed it. It goes through the epithelial barrier in the gut lining the way a normal infection would. And when you do that, you get that well-rounded protection. And you also get what are called secretory IgA antibodies that are secreted back out into the mucosa. And these are specialized antibodies that can actually block future infections from happening. So, yeah, they did provide not only well-rounded antibody training and creation, but they also provided that secretory IgA protection of infection. But the problem is you cannot reliably control the strengths of those vaccines. And they found that out the hard way, especially Bill Gates, when he decided that he was going to eradicate polio from the face of the earth. And he went into certain countries or areas of India and Africa and with these very aggressive oral polio vaccine campaigns, and ended up creating worse polio that existed before he even started. And the reason is because you cannot reliably control the strength of these products that are called live vaccines. And they're not live because viruses are not living things. They call them live because they're putting in the whole thing, all of it. And so this is why I think you're going to see a shift towards mucosal, inhalable vaccines, because they're going to try to get the antigen through the epithelial barrier, through the nasal lining or through the upper respiratory lining, so that it will create these secretory IgA antibodies to give you protection of a future infection. That makes sense, but the only way that they're going to be able to do that is by using the entire virus, the whole thing. You can't just use a little piece of it because, and I heard you talk about this, Tim, when you talk about original antigenic sin, because you're gonna train those T cells, which are going to first experience what's coming through that epithelial barrier. And if they're not seeing the whole thing, if they're only seeing just a little piece of it, and that little piece gets changed by future mutations, then you're not going to have that protection anymore. It won't be there because you've trained your T cells to be looking for the wrong thing. They're looking for what's being injected or inhaled through the lining, not the real thing. That's a significant problem that they're going to have to overcome. So again, the only way that you can get that full, well-rounded protection is by experiencing that natural infection. But people are afraid of that. And, May, you mentioned it. People are scared to death. They hear polio and they immediately think, oh my gosh, my kid is going to be the one who's going to end up, in crutches. But I will tell you that if you look on the CDC website, and it's also in the World Health Organization records on a polio infection, 70% of all polio infections, and I'm talking a real infection where the virus got through the epithelial barrier and it is now in you, in your blood and in your lymph. 70% of those infections are completely asymptomatic, no symptoms whatsoever. 24% of them are going to have symptoms of the common cold. 4% are going to have what's called temporary flaccid paralysis, right, which looks scary, but it totally resolves itself and it goes away within about 5 to 7 days. Less than 1% are going to develop the lasting paralysis. Less than 1%. And what kind of people get that? Well, it's the people that have immunosuppression. And what does it say right in the vaccine package insert? Do not give this product to a person who is immunosuppressed. Why? Because it's going to provoke the disease that it's trying to prevent. Does that make sense? Yep. Their immune system can't handle it. So it's not strong enough. So what are we doing as a society? We're going out and we are supposedly vaccinating or artificially immunizing the healthy ones, trying to prevent an illness from occurring in the weak ones. It doesn't work. Doesn't work that way. What we should be doing is helping the people that are immunosuppressed bulk their immune system so that they have that protection. And if you do get infected, and I don't care what the disease is, and it can be a really, really scary one, it's still treatable with palliative supportive care. It's still treatable.
Well,
I think
it's
we're
back.
better off treating and people that experience these infections and are not handling them properly than injecting something that puts their immune system at risk, especially with the adjuvants that you mentioned, which are highly,
Well,
highly
but
toxic.
what's really crazy is, we started doing all this stuff, 75 years ago or whatever. And then you look at, okay, like the tetanus shot. Well, the key to tetanus is early diagnosis, which is a challenge because tetanus can be hard. It's kind of masks itself before it presents as full-blown tetanus. But you can treat it with antibiotics. I mean,
Right.
that's the reality. Pertussis is the one that's really puzzles me because we've been giving all this pertussis vaccine and there's still pertussis outbreaks. But again, you have to diagnose it. If you diagnose it, it's really easy to treat. It's fabulously easy to treat in children that aren't infants and adults because it's a Z-Pack, for God's sake, and they're better. And so, I mean, there's this kind of overblown fear porn that just gets crazy.
Yeah.
But I want to take the fear porn to the next level, which is the mask issue with COVID and how you somehow just said, I've had this multi-decade career as an airline pilot, and I was willing to say this is a hill I'm going to die on. Like, so tell us that story because I find that incredibly fascinating.
Yeah, I just, I learned early in my training, and you did too, that a face mask, a surgical face mask, or a cloth face mask cannot stop an upper respiratory infection. It's absolutely possible. It's designed to trap droplets. And people say, well, it's good. It traps droplets. Well, that's exactly the problem. When you trap droplets in a mask and you're wearing that mask for an extended period of time, and that's what they wanted people to do. They wanted to wear these things for, 5 hours on a coast-to-coast flight. You're continuously building up other pathogens in those droplets. You're exposed to all kinds of things all day long. It's estimated that we all inhale about 100 million various viruses every single day, whether you're wearing a mask or not. You can't stop that from happening any more than you can stop the ocean tides. And so you're starting to trap other types of bacteria, other viruses, spores, pollens, fungus, you name it, it all gets trapped in the droplets. And what are you doing? By continuously wearing that mask for hours and hours and hours, you're constantly exposing your upper respiratory tract to more potential invaders. You're making yourself about 13 times more likely to develop an upper respiratory infection of any kind just by wearing a mask. And there were studies that were done on that in a hospital environment. So yeah, the whole idea was just ridiculous. Plus, they never did any safety studies on it to show, how it affected pilots' ability to process information, think clearly, reaction times, could be affected. None of that was tested. And so I just absolutely refused to do it for lots of different reasons. And I wasn't the only one. I ran across several other fellow pilots that refused to do it. And luckily, they had an early retirement program available to us, and we all took it and walked away, from a perfectly good career, because we were that I don't know what the word is, courageous, and we just had our hard line in the sand that we weren't going to do it.
So they had like a no tolerance policy, no mask.
There was no tolerance. Yeah. They called me on a layover. On one of my favorite layovers in Boston. I really enjoy, walking around Boston and running around along the river there. It's just a fun place to be. And I got, two separate calls from two different chief pilots from two different bases. One was Atlanta, where I was based at the time, and one was from New York, which was my previous base. And they said, we're getting reports that you're not wearing your face mask. I said, that's right. I will not wear that thing. And they said, well, you have to wear it as part of your uniform. And I said, well, I'm just not going to do it. And I gave them all the medical reasons why. And they listened, and they said, you know what, you're probably right, and you've got the medical training. But corporate has decided that we want all of our employees to wear the same mask, and it's an optical thing. That way it looks like Delta Airlines cares and is in this fight together.
Yeah, right. So, just like the Star of David in 1939.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a signaling thing. And
wow.
I wasn't going to play that game.
We want to know how many pilots you knew, or not even maybe knew personally, but were fired over this.
Well, I wouldn't use the word fired. Because we were given an opportunity to take an early retirement, and at Delta Airlines it was over 2,000 out of about 20,000. So that was about 10%.
10%
walked away with early retirement. Now, some of those were not specifically over the mask. It may have been that they were approaching retirement anyway and just wanted to leave a few months early. But I do know many that had like 5 years remaining, and they were getting up to the pinnacle of their career. And I was too. I was just getting ready to upgrade to the wide body Airbus, which is a significant increase in pay. And so, I walked away from that, and a lot of other pilots did as well. And I knew damn well that a mandated shot was going to come really closely after that. And it most certainly did. And so I started to speak about it right away at, school board meetings and county commissioner meetings. And some of my rants got pretty viral on the internet, and I just kept it going, and I still speak out, and I will never stop, because they're going to try this again.
Hell yeah.
They will. You'll see.
So where did that moral courage come from? Like, were you the kid in school that, was like hard to discipline? Did you go to the principal's office all the time? Were you the ultra,
like you?
I didn't go to the, like, where did this come from? Because I find it fascinating, because we see people's courage. Everyone thinks that if they were in 1939 Germany, they would be the one with Anne Frank in their attic, when in reality, they would be the one beating the pots and pans at their front door, getting the Gestapo to haul her ass out of the attic. That's the reality that we live in. And I was at work yesterday, and you see these people, and they come in, and it's like, my son has COVID. I now have the symptoms. I'm like, well, then you probably have COVID. I mean, that's common sense. But I just got a shot last week. So you're on shot 6, 7, or 8. And I just sat there and I go, like, where is the common sense? Like, this clearly doesn't work. So even if you completely believe that it worked for a short time, or it keeps people out of the hospital, if you're an otherwise healthy person, why would you keep exposing yourself to something that clearly doesn't do what it's supposed to do?
Let him answer the first question. We want to know if he's a rebel.
Yeah, they want to believe the lie. That's the problem. Yeah, and exactly. My job is to convince people that it is a lie and how to see through that. But anyway, where did the courage come from? I think it's in my DNA. I did a lot of family history on my family, and especially on my father's side, and it goes way back. And my family originally came over from Germany in the 1700s, right before the Revolutionary War, and all of my ancestors signed up to be in the Revolutionary War, and just valiantly fought for freedom. And it continued, in every war that happened after that. I had close relatives that absolutely, wouldn't tolerate loss of freedom. And so I think that's kind of where it comes from. I value my freedom. I like, freedom to do what I want, freedom to choose. And I think everybody should, continue to have those freedoms, including shots. If you want to go out and get a shot or 5 or 6, go for it. But I want to put a little caveat on that. The product's got to be safe. This product absolutely is not safe. It's not safe. It shouldn't even be on the market. It's contaminated with all kinds of stuff. DNA, we found out, that can actually integrate into the human genome. And who knows what we're doing to future generations. We're not going to find out until years from now. That's a significant problem.
Well,
So,
that's what happened with the polio vaccine.
Say again?
With the polio vaccine. So the original batches of the polio vaccine, they used monkey kidneys to culture the virus, because it was a quote live virus vaccine.
Yeah.
And they had no idea that there was, first of all, we had no idea that viruses can cause cancer, that there's, oncogenic viruses.
Right.
And then there was the simian virus that lots of monkeys had that gave monkeys no symptoms of anything. But unfortunately for humans, if you're infected with this, you get a solid tumor cancer 35 or 40 years later. And again, correlation does not cause causation, but correlation makes you scratch your head and hopefully do a study. You see all of these people that were vaccinated in the late 50s and early 60s. And then all of a sudden that demographic in the early 90s ends up with a spike in solid tumors. And you go, well, where did those come from? Well, obviously from, eating, not being vegan, obviously, right?
Yeah, so that SV40, that was a problem. And you're right, it didn't show up until, years down the road. And there's part of that SV40 is in this shot.
Yep.
We know that now. And we need to find out why that's in there. There's no reason for that to be in there. Why did they put that in there? It may have something to do with the fact that it can actually act as a chaperone to pull some of that genetic material directly into the nucleus of the cell. And then that's how it gets integrated into our genome. And is this being done on purpose? Kind of looks like it might be. There's certain elites, and this has been around since the early 70s, that think that there's way too many people on this planet. And they want to do whatever they can to limit the expansion of the population, which is against, what God said, be fruitful and multiply. And they're trying to do the exact opposite, all kinds of crazy ways. And these toxic vaccines is one way to do it for sure.
Yeah.
And they're killing people that are elderly with these shots, and they're also affecting fertility rates, and miscarriages are on the rise as well for people that get these shots.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about
specifically
in the aviation world with the mandated they're still mandating pilots get these now. Is that right?
No. In fact, there were only 3 large airlines that I know of that absolutely mandated the shot for all employees. And that was United Airlines, Hawaiian Airlines, and Alaska Airlines. Delta Airlines never did technically mandate the shot for any of its existing employees. Same at American Airlines, same at Southwest Airlines. They didn't mandate it, but they strongly coerced it and encouraged it and enticed crew members to get it by giving them extra stuff, like extra money in their paycheck, lots of extra money. I'm talking thousands of dollars. Extra vacation days, extra days off during the month that you got the shot. And they illegally penalized pilots and flight attendants that did not get the shot by making them pay more for their health insurance. which is also illegal. And they got sued over that. So there is no more mandate for the COVID shot at any airline in the United States. And I verified that. I called all of the human resource departments of all of the airlines that are United States based. Nobody mandates that shot anymore. I don't know about worldwide. I didn't go that far, so it could be still mandated at some of the airlines. I know it is at some cruise lines. Still mandate all of their employees to get the shot, and I think Windstar is one, which is a cruise line that I really enjoy cruising on. But they've still mandated all of their employees to get this stupid shot. As far as mandates at airlines, there are 2 airlines that do mandate a shot, and those are Delta Airlines and United Airlines. And the shot that they mandate all pilots get is the yellow fever shot. And I've been trying to fight that for years also, because that just absolutely makes no sense at all whatsoever. Doesn't make any sense.
Now, is that regardless of where you're flying, or only for those
Right.
flying in endemic? Really?
Doesn't matter. Every pilot is required as part of their entrance qualifications as a new hire to get the shot. And if you are a current employee, you have to get the shot as well. So I fought that when I was at Delta Airlines, and I did not get that shot and almost lost my job over it. And that was a pretty stressful time, but I was able to make it through that. And I was showing other pilots how to avoid getting the shot as well if they didn't want to get it.
Yeah,
And
I'm
that's
sure
what
they
really got me in the most trouble.
I was going to say, I'm sure that they really appreciated that.
They didn't like that.
The whole thing about the mandates that still just completely blows my mind is how counter to common sense it is. So, some genius on Twitter posted months ago, well, imagine a scenario where it's a 50% kill of the virus and you have a 100% safe and effective vaccine. Would you still be against mandates? And I sit there and I go, of course I'd be against mandates, because if you had a medical intervention that takes 50% mortality to 0% mortality with no side effects in your mind game, then people would be stabbing their mother in the back of the head with a fork to get it. You wouldn't have to mandate it. The whole fact that you have to mandate anything tells you that people don't want it. You don't mandate iPhone usage. Yeah. You don't mandate having sex with your spouse. People want those things, so they do them voluntarily.
Right.
That's a sideline topic we won't get into.
No, but that's what I'm saying. It's common sense. Like if the virus was as bad as they said, and the vaccine is as good as they said, there's no mandates needed. It's intuitive. That's what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. But we're never going to get to that point. We're never going to have a shot that's going to give you that protection. You've got to experience the natural infection. And again, people are afraid of it. Here's one for you. Did you know that there's people running around right now that have never been vaccinated against rabies, but they have antibodies against rabies? Did you know that?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I heard that not too long ago.
So
or read that recently.
What does that mean? That means that people get exposed to the rabies virus and didn't even know it.
Yep.
They had a natural infection and they didn't even know it.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Think about that. So when they say that, rabies has an almost 100% mortality rate, that's not true. The mortality comes in when we're talking about people that are having immunosuppression. Their bodies are dealing with other things. Well, maybe they have cancer, or maybe they've got some kind of a chronic illness that's depleting their immune system. Right. And they're not able to come into harmony with it. That's the problem. That's where the high mortality is. And so they'll use those numbers to scare the daylights out of people, and they'll try it with bird flu. I guarantee you, they're already tossing around numbers of like 52 to 60% mortality rate. Have you heard that?
Yeah, but that again, it's all I remember I was on a board of directors of a 7-hospital system years ago. And this was back in 2009 with H1N1, and everyone absolutely pooed their britches over that, right? And it ended up being nothing. And then they had an H1N1 vaccine that they had to pull off the market because it killed, like, I don't know, 50 people, and that was enough for them to pull it off the market.
That was enough. Yeah.
And then, but at any rate, so then we talked about avian flu. Well, it's all a theoretical problem, because if you get a what is it, H5N1 infection, it can have a super high mortality rate. The problem is that you have to get it from birds. So the only people that get infected are the people that have high exposure to birds. But they're like, well, if it ever transmits human to human, then we're screwed. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not going to do that, because it would have done that already in the last 19 gajillion years. It doesn't, because birds
and again, if you really look at the numbers, if it gets to either a pandemic or an epidemic or whatever you want to call it, it's going to be exactly the same as what happened with COVID. Most people that get exposed won't even display symptoms, and those that do are going to be mild, and it's going to be a small percentage of the population that's going to have trouble. And those are the ones that are going to need treatment. And you know what the best treatment for an emergency like that is? And I know you know the answer to this, Tim, because you use them: monoclonal antibodies.
Mm-hmm.
And you get those from people that experienced the disease and they convalesced. And you know what? The federal or the Department of Defense actually acknowledged this decades ago, and I wish I could find the document where they actually declared that the best countermeasure for any bioterrorism activity or toxin or bioweapon, the best is monoclonal antibodies. That's the best countermeasure. Right.
And May and I both, I did it a little longer than she did, but we were in the startup clinic, as we've mentioned in other shows, and we treated probably 1,000 people in our little rinky-dink clinic with monoclonal antibodies. And I'm telling you, when you had the right monoclonal antibody with the right COVID variant, people would be getting better in hours. Like it was absolutely like pixie dust. Yet somehow we pushed the vaccine and we didn't push this. Like I would be screaming at people. I'm like, why can't you get this in 7-Eleven? I mean,
but do you see how easy it is to believe the lie? Because the antibodies can be powerful, but they got to be the right antibodies. And you nailed it. But you don't get these antibodies from injections. You don't get them that way.
No,
you get them from a convalescent individual that experienced the whole thing. That's where you get them.
And they're so
the amazing creation of the human body.
No, but
nothing can beat what the human body.
The thing that's so frustrating, though, is from a genetic manufacturing perspective. Now, it's so easy. So virtually every new drug we make is not like a molecule; it's an antibody. We use monoclonal antibodies to produce drugs. Why? Because we've nailed that technology down, where you can find the receptor, genetically engineer an antibody that goes into that receptor, and then all you have to do is use a gigantic. They don't even use E. coli anymore. They use a yeast fermenter. It's basically like making beer, and the yeast just craps out all of these antibodies. You filter that out, and you have it. Like if you look, I mean, it was a sub note in COVID, but we had 5 or 6 different monoclonal antibodies, and they would modify these literally within a couple weeks of a new variant. It was, if that was the thing that was pushed and you really, really cared about saving people's lives, it wouldn't have been remdesivir. It would have been Zithromax steroids, monoclonal antibodies, and a pat on the head, because you would have been feeling better.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So what are we doing now? Everybody's all excited about this new mRNA technology because they can rapidly change it. Right? You just mentioned the word rapid. We can do it like in a moment's notice. As long as we got the genetic sequence, We can make some modified RNA and stick it in a plasmid and feed it to E. coli, and they spit out this stuff by the billions. And then we're going to inject this into people to make the antigen, to make the protein. Well, what's the problem with that? The protein that they're making is biologically active. It's not like a protein that you eat or proteins that our bodies are making all of the time and secreting, and other cells willingly take those proteins in to use them for other purposes. No, these proteins are not like that. They are biologically active. That means that they attach to cellular receptors and just sit there, blocking those receptors. When you have a natural infection, they use the same receptors, but that receptor is used by the cell to pull the entire virus particle inside of itself and decide what to do with it at that point. But no, these protein antigens that are created by this mRNA technology shot don't do that. They just sit on those receptors and block them. Well, what's the problem with that? Well, your immune system is going to react to that in a violent way, and it's going to destroy those cells. And that's where your tissue damage occurs. And that's where pathology occurs. And so these mRNA platform shots are going to create pathology every single time, every time. And it's going to vary from person to person. Why does it vary? Because number one, you can't tell where the tip of the needle is when they push the plunger. So that's going to be variable. Number two, you don't know if the mRNA that's in the shot is actually viable mRNA. It's got a shelf life. So some people are going to get injected with stuff that's not going to do anything. Plus, you've got cellular differences in people based on their pH. The way the mRNA technology works is your cell has to have a certain pH in order for that injectable liposome or lipid nanoparticle to open up and allow the mRNA to escape. Well, everybody's different. So some people that get injected with this stuff are going to make loads of it. And other people that get injected aren't going to make, quite so much of it. So there's so much variability involved here. And that's another problem as well. They're trying to fit everybody into the same mold, thinking that, just inject this and it'll make antibodies. It does. But, some people are going to get the wrong kind of antibodies or too many. Yeah, this is not a good concept. We need to get over it.
I have had a thought a little while ago when you were talking about the airlines that have mandated the vaccine, and I'm curious if there's any data on what's happening. So that was Alaska, Hawaiian, and United Airlines.
Yeah.
So has there been any data or publications or just anecdotal evidence or anything you found or seen or heard about side effects in pilots or any of the air crew, whoever have to get this in those companies as far as untoward side effects?
So according to union data that came out at Delta, American, and United, the incidence of pilots going out on long-term disability has increased by 3 times since the rollout of the shot.
So 300%.
I started looking into 3 times. I started looking into early pilot deaths and found that starting in January of 2021, there was a 40% increase in the incidence of pilots dying prior to the normal age of retirement, which is 65. There's a 40% increase in that happening. And that perfectly aligned with the rollout of the shot. And that also aligns with other actuarial data that came out of insurance companies showing the exact same numbers of the working age group, 18 to 65. There was a 40% increase in all-cause mortality. So there's a temporal association to the shot there, that's for sure. So another problem is increased incidence of incapacitation, pilots incapacitated in the cockpit. There's been an indication that has been on the rise as well. The FAA keeps a database. It's called the incapacitation data registry, and they've been keeping this running since 1993, but they stopped it in 2022. They stopped tracking pilot incapacitations in the United States in 2022. Why did they do that? We need to find out. I did a quick search on the internet, and they said that the reasons were three reasons. The first reason was there was no funding or personnel to keep it going. Well, that sounds like a lie to me. Number two, they said that the way that the incapacitations were being reported was too variable, and it left too many gaps and too many inconsistencies. My gut feeling is that they were increasing. They were significantly on the rise, is what I think is happening.
Can you define for us incapacitations in the cockpit?
Yeah, so
because,
pilots
a lot of people think drunk or falling asleep at the wheel.
So pilots are trained for incapacitation of the other pilot, and we always have been for decades, because we know that it can happen. A classic example is food poisoning, and that can incapacitate a person, and you're unable to perform your duties as a crew member if that happens. I mean, it makes you really sick, and that's one of the reasons why it's written in all flight ops manuals, and hardly anybody follows this rule, but it is in there, that when pilots are on a layover together, they're not supposed to eat the same food from the menu, because they're trying to prevent the possibility of the next day, having both pilots go down with a food poisoning type of scenario. So we are trained for pilot incapacitation. And I can tell you that either pilot is perfectly capable of safely landing that aircraft and getting it to the gate, even if the other pilot is dead or has passed away in the seat. The problem is the possibility of both pilots being incapacitated. Now, I admit that that's going to be a very, very rare event, probably almost impossible for that to happen. But what is a real threat is the possibility of a pilot having a seizure, a full body seizure. And this has happened in the past. And I've got documents that clearly show this has happened in the past. And it puts in a full flight control input that is unexpected, and the other pilot is not going to be able to overcome control input, and that could cause loss of aircraft control. And if this happens during a critical phase of flight, like during the takeoff phase or during the landing phase, you're not going to have the altitude required to recover from that, and the aircraft will crash. And it's going to be a disaster. And so we now know that seizures can definitely be an adverse reaction from this shot for at least 4 pathways that I have discovered. And I write about this in my Substack. And I think I gave you my Substack address, and also on my Rumble channel. I do videos on this. I talk about the mechanisms of how the shot can actually produce these problems in pilots. So it's all there. And so what I'm yelling and screaming about is that what we need to be doing right now is screening pilots to see if they have these subtle things that are happening that may be completely asymptomatic. But there are simple tests that can be done. Like looking at the retinal capillaries, for example. If you've got microclotting or microclumping of blood cells, you can see that happening in retinal capillaries. And if it's happening there, it can be happening all over the body. Now, what's the danger in that? Well, it creates areas of ischemia where you're not getting the proper amount of blood supply, oxygen, and nutrients. If it happens in the brain, then you start to get subtle things happening like brain fog, inability to think clearly, the possibility of losing your vision temporarily. These are all called transient ischemic attacks. And, the FAA just put out a notice in 2023. It's called a SAFO, a safety alert to operators. And they're showing that there's a significant increase in aircraft incursions, airplanes getting too close to one another. And we just had an incident that just happened just a couple of weeks ago in Syracuse, where there was an aircraft on the runway cleared for takeoff. It was a Delta aircraft, and an American Airlines flight cleared to land on the same runway. And it was the American pilot that decided that this was not a good idea and said something to the controller, and the controller issued an order for that aircraft to go around. But they missed a very important part of that. When you issue a go around order to an aircraft, you're supposed to tell it what altitude to climb to and what heading to fly, so that it doesn't have an incursion with the aircraft that's taking off. Well, for whatever reason, the controller didn't do that. So this needs to be investigated. This is unacceptable. You know, was it brain fog? Was it inexperience of the controller? Was it a DEI issue? We need to get to the bottom of it. We need to know, did that controller get the shot or not? The FAA, they don't even care at this point. That's a problem. Whether or not a pilot or an air traffic controller, which is required to have a medical certificate to do their job, that should be a part of their medical record. Now, normally I'm against something like that. I'm against, vaccine tracking, but this is different. This is a product that was mandated illegally. It was an experimental product that goes directly against the FAA internal guidance. You will not put experimental products into pilots or air traffic controllers. Well, they did. They did that. We need to find out why, and we need to track who got the shot or not. When did you get it? How many did you get? When was your last booster shot? This needs to be all entered into the pilot's permanent medical record. That way we can at least have a baseline to start tying these in to incidents that happen like this, you see. Absolutely. So yeah, it's a significant problem, and there has to be some significant changes that happen. And that's kind of why I decided to become more active in the organization that you mentioned earlier called usfreedomflyers.org. I'm the vice president of that association, and I'm encouraging anyone who's interested in flight safety, which would basically be anyone who sets foot on an aircraft.
Should be. Please
join US Freedom Flyers. It is free to join. That way you'll get in on our email chain and you'll see what we're up to. Some of the changes that need to be made. And we need a lot of people behind us. We need a lot of support, a lot of membership. We also need financial support. And it is a 501c3. So if you're able to donate, we appreciate that as well.
Perfect.
I mean, I'm just scared to get on a plane now. But when you think about it, because
it could be worse. You could have the Secret Service being the air traffic controller.
Yeah, I know. I live in my bubble.
Yeah, so I want to tell you that flying is still safe. It is still safe. That's evident, but there are definite signs that safety is eroding, and the FAA knows it. In fact, I just read their latest advisory that came out. They hired an independent company called MITRE, MITRE. And because they stopped the incapacitation data registry, they're looking to MITRE, which is a company that looks for solutions for safety in large corporations of all kinds. And they're looking for advice from MITRE on what should be done. And what MITRE is telling them to do is to collect data better. And you have to have better training on pilots to recognize subtle incapacitations. And, a subtle incapacitation can be a pilot, just spacing out for a couple of minutes. And, the other pilot's got to be able to recognize that and record this. And it's all got to be, recorded, and records got to be kept on this. And there has to be partnerships with airlines so that they can keep better track of this.
Yeah.
Any type of a pilot incapacitation that happens is supposed to be reported to the National Transportation Safety Board. And it's written in the rules that they're supposed to do that within 2 to 3 hours after the aircraft lands. Well, the problem is some airlines aren't doing that. They're not following the rules. So there's got to be some oversight here as well. So yeah, significant changes need to be made, or we're setting ourselves up for a disaster.
Absolutely. People should be concerned. They think of their doctor not, being sharp. It's the end of the day and they're tired when they're doing their major surgery case. And I'm thinking, yeah, but that's one person that's affected, which is
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
on
I
the
talk
operating
about
table.
that.
Whereas in the air, you have the ability to affect
Yeah,
hundreds of people at
it
once.
was so funny because when I was on the parent board of this corporation, and the CEO would talk about how we need to be more like the airline industry.
Mhm.
And I said, okay, you can be like the airline industry in the OR, like where you flag the person's leg that's going to have surgery, and you do double checks and you have checklists. I said, you can't do that in an emergency room. It doesn't work like that. It's in a completely different environment. And I said, besides, we're doctors. Pilots can kill people 400 at a time. We only kill them one at a time.
Yeah.
They didn't like that, but
yeah, there was a book written about that. It's called Black Box Thinking, where
Yes.
they compared errors that happen in a medical environment versus errors that happen in aviation. And I mean, you pretty much nailed it. When the error happens in aviation, it kills a lot of people all at once. And so there is going to be a drastic change in rules and regulations to affect that scenario so that it does not happen again. So they're basically, these rule changes are written in blood.
Yep.
All right. Well, we will definitely encourage people to check out the website, which is it's usfreedomflyers.org, correct? And put that in our show notes as well. Any other links or
yeah, I would encourage people to take a look at my Substack. It's Dr. Kevin Stillwagon .substack.com, and I talk about a lot of the issues that we just talked about. And we're not going to talk about this right now, but people always ask me about chemtrails, so I cover that extensively in one of my that'd be another show for another day. So I talk about that in my Substack. And I also have a Rumble channel. If you just go to rumble.com and type in my name, Kevin Stillwagon, all is one word, I've got a lot of educational videos out there that talk about the immune system, how it works, where the natural protection of infection actually resides. I talk a lot about the dangers of vaccines. It's all there. It's all educational. I don't sell anything. It's all free to look at, including my Substack. And the book that you mentioned that I wrote back in 1984, that's actually republished on my Substack. You can read it chapter by chapter for free.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for your time. This was fun. Maybe we'll have you back for chemtrails, or we have another show called Doc Tales with Cocktails. So maybe we can have a couple drinks and talk about
that. That would be interesting, because what I have to say about chemtrails, a lot of people don't want to hear, but it's what I think is the truth.
Well, we'll save that, because again, that is another bunny trail.
That would be a good one, I think.
Okay.
All right. Thanks a lot, Dr. Stillwagon.
It's my pleasure. It was fun.
All right. If you don't mind, oops, he disappeared. Yeah. Okay, no problem. We'll have to get him next time then.
I'm still here.
Oh, yeah, there you go. I was going to ask, we always like to do this really quick rapid fire segment with our guests just for fun. If you got time for a couple personal fun questions that we like to do.
Yeah.
So for instance, tell us, of all the places, you've traveled a lot as an airline pilot, one place you'd like to go that you haven't been.
A place that I'd like to go that I haven't been. The South Pole. And I want to actually fly over the South Pole. I want to take a private jet from Ushuaia, which is on the tip of South America, and I'm going to fly it in a direct line to Perth, Australia. It's about a 10-hour flight. It goes directly over the South Pole. And I'm going to film the whole thing, flying over water, over land, headed directly south, over the South Pole. The compass spins and heads directly north. And then you fly over water again, and then you land in Perth, Australia. And that will settle it once and for all. The Earth is not flat.
I
Yes.
love it. I love it. That's excellent.
Yeah, that sounds like that would be
I'm going to do it.
that would be a great charter. You could make that. I think you could get some rich guys to pay for that and make it.
I'm already working on it.
How about this?
Well,
might
let
not
us
be
know.
this
That
might
would be
not be
so
a
fun.
fast rapid fire question, but any crazy memorable experience as a pilot?
Yeah. My most memorable, I think, is flying inside of the Aurora Borealis.
Oh wow,
And,
yes.
that was actually very close to the North Pole. And that was an incredible experience. Yeah.
I mean,
never forget that.
we grew up in Canada and we experienced them a lot, but I never would think about flying through them.
Does it do anything to instruments?
No, but you can look, the windows in the cockpit are curved, so you can kind of look up and it looks like it goes on forever. And then you look down and it looks like it's literally touching the surface of the earth. And when you look forward, it's like you're flying through this multicolored curtain. Unbelievably beautiful. Yeah.
Just like you're literally going through one of those kaleidoscope things
thing.
of life. Oh yeah, that would be amazing. Favorite book you've read recently?
I got to tell you, I used to read books all the time when I was commuting as an airline pilot. You can't read when you're in the cockpit, but when you're commuting back and forth to work, and I used to read a lot of novels in the back, but I haven't done that in a very, very long time. Most of my reading now is all reading medical journals on PubMed and recent research on what's going on with this shot and mRNA platforms. And it sounds boring, but it's interesting to me. And that's my thing. That's what I do. I take all that complicated information and I try to boil it down into easy to understand language and put it on my Substack and Rumble. So that's kind of what I do now.
Well, we thank you.
I miss reading those novels though. That was fun.
Yeah. Everybody's brain needs to escape.
I think James Patterson was probably my favorite author that I would read.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for being here. We'll let you go now officially, and we'll put the links up for the show. And I can hardly wait to do the chemtrails, so we will reach out to you on that.
Okay.
All right.
All right, you guys.
Yeah, we'll have a real studio, hopefully finished here in the next 2.5 to 3 months. And if we do, we'll have you down because I know
will do that. I will definitely drive to Sarasota and do it live in your studio.
Yeah, that'd be
a blast.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's no secret that medicine is a bit uptight. That's why Tim and I created BS Free MD to mix things up a little and have fun in the process. Besides, we are having these exact same discussions all the time, so we thought we might as well invite everyone to the party. If you really like us, you can get plenty more and maybe see one of Tim's cool tattoos on our Instagram or Facebook pages at BS Free MD. See you next time.
But we try to keep BS Free MD as raw and real as possible. We can't be held responsible for any medical decisions or discussions had as a result of what you've heard on the show. We know, bummer. But the truth is, we really do care about your questions. So feel free to reach out to us by email at doc@bsfreemd.com.